Welcome back to Inside the Philippines. Today's story comes from a man named Wolfgang Brenner, 55 years old, a plumber from just outside Stuttgart who spent over 2 decades building a business he was proud of, with his own 2 hands. This one's a little different from some of the stories we've told you. There's no obvious villain here, no one you'll want to shout at your screen about. Just a good man, a family, and a slow collision between 2 very different ideas of what trust actually means. Wolfgang came to the Philippines looking to build something again after losing almost everything back home. What he found there wasn't quite a scam, and it wasn't quite love gone right either. It's somewhere in between, and by the end of this one, you might not know exactly how to feel about it either. That's kind of the point. Here's his story, in his own words. I was a plumber. Am a plumber, I suppose, even though I haven't touched a pipe wrench in 2 years. 22 years I ran my own installation business, just outside Stuttgart. Heating systems, water lines, the occasional big commercial job. I had 6 men working for me at the peak. 6. I paid their wages every month for over a decade without missing once. That mattered to me. Still does, actually. You have to understand something about being a tradesman. When you fix something, you know if it's fixed. There's no ambiguity. Water flows or it doesn't. A joint holds or it leaks. 30 years I spent in a world where things were provable, where you tested the pressure, and the pipe told you the truth. Then I took out a loan to expand. Bigger workshop, 2 new vans, took on a large contract for a housing development outside the city. And the housing development fell through. Financing issues, nothing to do with me, just bad timing. Meanwhile, 2 younger outfits undercut my prices by nearly 1/3. Kids, some of them, with half my experience and none of my overhead. I don't blame them, that's business. But it meant I had a loan for an expansion that no longer made sense, and less work coming in to pay for it. 18 months. That's how long it took to go from a stable, respected business to nothing. 18 months to undo 22 years. I sold the vans first. Then most of the tools, which, I'll be honest with you, hurt more than the vans did. A man's tools are personal. I kept my father's old pipe wrench. That's it. That's the only thing I kept. Sold the workshop building last to a logistics company who turned it into a storage depot for delivery vans. Every time I drove past afterward, I'd see some cardboard boxes stacked where my workbench used to be. I told people I retired early. My sister, my old football mates, even the bank manager who processed the final sale. I think I told him too, actually. Some line about being ready for a change of pace. It wasn't true. But the truth felt like something I couldn't hand to another person. Does that make sense? Failure feels like a smell you're worried will follow you into a room. So there I was, 53 at the time. This was about 2 years back now. Divorced 11 years, no kids, sitting in a rented 1-bedroom flat in a part of Stuttgart 1, didn't recognize as mine. 95,000 euros in the bank, which sounds like something and is something. I'm not complaining. But it was also the entire remaining evidence of a life's work, sitting in an account, doing nothing, meaning nothing. I didn't know what a man like me was supposed to do with himself. That's the honest answer. I wasn't built for sitting still. Some men retire and take up golf, or gardening, whatever. I tried gardening for about 3 weeks. Hated it. Plants don't tell you anything. No pressure gauge on a tomato plant. It was my nephew, actually, who mentioned the Philippines to me first. Not seriously, just in passing, some video he'd seen about a German couple who'd retired to Cebu on almost nothing a month. I watched it mostly out of boredom. Then I watched another one. Then I was down some rabbit hole at 2 in the morning, watching men my age, older even, talk about something called an SRRV, a retirement visa, the cost of living, beachfront condos for what a garage would cost me back home. I want to be clear, I wasn't looking for romance. I want that understood. I was looking at spreadsheets, basically, in video form. Visa deposit requirements, monthly living costs, health care access. That's the kind of information I trust. Numbers. I've built my whole life around numbers actually working. But you go down enough of these rabbit holes, and eventually the algorithm, or whatever it is, starts showing you other things. Forums turned into Facebook groups. Facebook groups turned into ads for Filipina dating sites. And, I'll admit, I clicked on one. Told myself it was still research. Understanding the culture. Understanding what life there actually looked like. Not just the beaches in the tourism videos. That's not exactly true either, if I'm honest with you. Some part of me, some part one wasn't ready to admit to, was lonely in a way that had nothing to do with visas or exchange rates. 11 years divorced. No kids. A business that had been my whole identity, gone. A man gets quiet inside after enough of that. Quiet in a way that starts to feel permanent. I made an account. Christian Filipina, it was called. Filled out a profile. Put an old photo up from a company dinner. Before I'd lost the weight I lost during the bad years. The stress weight, not the good kind. Wrote something honest in my bio, actually. Plumber. Business failed. Looking to build a simple life somewhere warmer. Didn't dress it up. I didn't expect much. A few messages came in, mostly women whose profiles felt, I don't know how to put it, mass-produced. Same 3 photos, same generic messages about God and family values within the first line. I wasn't naive. I'd read the warnings, everyone has, the stories about men losing their pensions to women who don't exist. Then a message came in from someone called Marites. That's where it starts, really. Everything before that was just a man in a flat in Stuttgart, waiting for something without knowing what. After that message, I wasn't waiting anymore. I was moving toward something. Whether that was a good direction or not, well, that's what the rest of this is about. The message came in on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were bin collection day in my building, and I'd gone down to the courtyard in my socks to drag the container back in, and when I came back up, there was a notification, Christian Filipina. One new message. I almost didn't open it, honestly. By that point, I'd had maybe 40 messages from the site, most of them opening with something like, "Hello, dear. How are you today? God bless." And a photo that looked like it belonged on a calendar, not a dating profile. This one was different. Short. She asked what kind of plumbing I did. Residential or commercial. That was it. Not, "Hello, handsome." Not a Bible verse. A practical question. From a plumber's daughter, apparently, her father had done similar work back in Iloilo before he passed. Her name was Marites. 34. Ran a small sari-sari store from the front of her family's house. The kind of place you see everywhere there. A little window with a grill, cigarettes and shampoo sachets and instant noodles stacked up. Maybe a cooler with San Miguel and soft drinks for the neighborhood. She sent me a photo of it once, unprompted, no filter, nothing posed. Just her standing behind the counter in a faded t-shirt, squinting a bit because of the sun. I want to be honest with you about something. I told myself for the first few weeks that I was just being polite, answering messages, nothing more. I was 53 then, remember? Sitting in that flat with my 95,000 euros and my father's pipe wrench and not much else. A man gets lonely in a way that's difficult to admit, even to himself. And I wasn't about to admit it to a stranger on a dating website. So I called it research. Cultural exchange, something like that. In my head anyway. But she kept asking questions. Real ones. What's the difference between PVC and copper piping? She wanted to know once, because her cousin was renovating, and the contractor kept switching his answer, depending on what he wanted to charge. I actually laughed out loud at that. Sat there in my kitchen typing out an explanation of pipe corrosion rates like an idiot. Delighted, genuinely delighted, that someone wanted to know. She sent voice notes instead of just texting after the first couple of weeks. Her English was good, careful, the kind where you can tell someone learned it properly in school and then kept practicing it, not the English you pick up from television. There was a rhythm to how she spoke, a little rise at the end of sentences. I found myself listening to some of them twice, not because I didn't understand, because I liked the sound of it. 4 months, this went on. Messages most days, voice notes maybe 3 times a week, and eventually video calls on Messenger, her sitting in the back room of the store with the television going somewhere behind her, sometimes a rooster going off outside, which I found strange and asked about. And she laughed and said, "Welcome to the province, Wolfgang. The roosters don't know what time it is." And here's the thing I want you to understand, because I've turned it over in my head more times than I can count since. In 4 months, she never once asked me for money. Not a peso, not a hint. I'd read the warnings, same as anyone who goes looking into this. Everyone tells you they'll ask for money within the first few weeks. There'll be some emergency, a sick relative, a phone bill, something. I was waiting for it, honestly. Half expecting it, the way you wait for a kettle to click off. It never came. So when a colleague back home, one of the few old contacts I still spoke to, sent me an article about Filipina scam profiles, I sent it back to him with something like, "Well, this one's not doing any of that, actually." I remember feeling almost proud of it. Like I'd found the one that had gotten past the checkpoint clean. Vetted, in my head. Verified. That's a plumber's brain for you, I suppose. Everything gets tested before it's trusted. I think about that particular piece of logic a lot now. The not asking for money, I mean. At the time it felt like proof. Now I understand it a little differently. It wasn't proof of anything except that she hadn't asked yet. But you can't tell a lonely man that in the moment. He won't hear it. We talked about her family some. Her mother, her younger sister who was still in school, an older sister who was married with 2 kids of her own, and a brother-in-law who did construction work. Small contracting jobs mostly, houses and the odd small building. I remember thinking, when she mentioned him, there's a tradesman in this family too. Felt like something in common before I'd even met the man. By month 4, I wasn't sleeping right. Not badly, just thinking. Lying there doing sums in my head, working out flight costs from Frankfurt, whether I could get a good rate through Doha or Istanbul, how many days I'd need to actually get a feel for a place 3,000 kilometers away from anything I understood. I looked up Iloilo, watched drone footage of it on YouTube, the port, the old Spanish-era buildings downtown, Jaro Cathedral, the traffic on Diversion Road that looked like nothing I'd ever driven through in my life. I didn't tell her right away that I was thinking about visiting. Some part of me was still cautious, still the man who tests the pressure before he trusts the pipe. But I remember the night I finally typed it out. "I'm thinking of coming to see you," I wrote. "Would that be all right?" It took her almost 4 hours to reply, which for her was unusual. She was normally quick. And when she did, it was one line. She said, "Only if you want to, Wolfgang." Not begging. Not overexcited. Just that. Only if you want to. I booked the flight 2 days later. First time in 2 years I'd felt something other than that flat gray nothing I'd been carrying around since the workshop sale. Nervous as hell, mind you. 53 years old, and my hands were actually shaking a bit when I confirmed the payment. But it was a different kind of nervous. The kind that means you're still alive in there somewhere. The flight was Frankfurt to Doha, then Doha to Manila, then a domestic hop down to Iloilo on a budget airline where the seats didn't recline, and the woman next to me ate a full bag of dried mangoes and offered me some, which I thought was a nice thing for a stranger to do. 20-some hours total, door to door. I hadn't slept properly the last leg, too wound up, watching the water change color out the little window as we came down over the Guimaras Strait, from that deep ocean blue to a sort of green-brown near the coast. Iloilo Airport is small. You walk straight out into the heat. That's the first thing. No gradual adjustment, just a wall of it. Thick, wet heat that gets into your shirt before you've even found your bag. And the smell. Diesel from the vans idling outside. Something frying somewhere. That sweet, rotting fruit smell that just sort of exists in the air there. I stood there with my one suitcase feeling like I'd landed on a different planet, not just a different country. She was waiting past the arrivals barrier. I'd seen her face 100 times on video calls by then. But it's different, isn't it? Seeing someone stand there in the flesh, in real light, not through a screen with the contrast turned up. She was smaller than I'd pictured somehow, wearing a yellow blouse. She waved, this small wave, almost shy, and I remember my chest doing something strange, a sort of pulling feeling, and I thought, "Don't be an old fool, Wolfgang." And then I walked over anyway, and she hugged me, and it was fine. It was more than fine, actually. It felt like something clicking into place that I hadn't realized was loose. We didn't really talk much on the tricycle ride to where she lived, some ways out from the city center, past rice fields going a sort of gold-green in the afternoon light, past roadside stores, and a couple of basketball courts with kids playing barefoot despite the heat, which I found remarkable. And past a church, huge white building, bells going as we passed, must have been 5 o'clock Mass starting. She just held my hand. Her hand was small and rough in a couple of places, working hands, and I liked that about her immediately. More than the yellow blouse or the shy wave, if I'm honest. Her family's house was concrete block, single story, tin roof, the Sari Sari store built right into the front of it, same as the photos. And I want to tell you, I have never in my life been fed the way that family fed me in those first 2 weeks. Her mother, small woman, sharp eyes, didn't speak much English but made up for it by putting food in front of me every time I sat down anywhere near a table. Sinigang the first night, that sour tamarind soup, and lechon on the Sunday, because apparently a foreign guest warranted a whole roast pig, which embarrassed me a little, knowing what that must have cost them. Her sister was there most days too, with her husband, a stocky, quiet man named Ronnie, who did small construction jobs around the province, and their 2 kids running around the yard half the time in bare feet and bike shorts. Ronnie and I got along in this odd, wordless way tradesmen sometimes do. He showed me some of his tools once, an old cordless drill held together with electrical tape, and I remember thinking, that man is doing serious work with equipment I wouldn't trust for a garden shed. What struck me hardest, though, wasn't the food or the heat or even Maritis herself, honestly. It was how instantly I was family. Nobody sat me down and explained anything. I was just absorbed into it, given a plastic chair at the table, handed a spoon, included in every conversation, even the parts that switched into Hiligaynon that I couldn't follow a word of. Marite's mother would just periodically translate a bit for me, whatever she thought I needed to know. One evening, her mother did try to explain something, actually. We were sitting outside after dinner, and I'd asked, clumsily probably, why the family did so much for each other, why Ronnie helped his brother-in-law's cousin move a refrigerator across town for free, that kind of thing. She said something like, in the Philippines, if somebody helps you, you don't forget it. You carry it. You pay it back, maybe not to them exactly, maybe to someone else, but you carry it. Marites translated the phrase for me. Utang na loob. Debt of the inside, more or less. Debt from within yourself. I remember nodding like I understood it fully. I didn't. Not really. Not then. The sari-sari store came up almost by accident. I noticed the shelves were thin, gaps where stock should be, and Marites mentioned, sort of in passing while restocking cigarettes one afternoon, that a supplier had raised prices, and she hadn't been able to keep the inventory full the last couple months. Wasn't a sob story. She said it the same way she'd mentioned the weather. I did the maths myself, actually, sitting there with a notebook like I still did for the business back home. Force of habit, I suppose. Told her 150,000 pesos would restock properly, and probably get her a small fridge upgrade too. About 2,500 euros back home. Nothing that would touch my savings in any real way. She said, no, Wolfgang, you don't have to. Quite firm about it, actually. More firm than I expected. Waved her hand a little. And I believed that. Still do, mostly. I told her I wanted to. That it wasn't charity. It was an investment in something, in us, maybe, though I didn't put it that plainly at the time. She let me, eventually. Took a good hour of back and forth, her mother chiming in a bit too, before Marites finally just nodded and said, okay, salamat, thank you, and hugged me again in that store doorway with the tin roof ticking above us from the heat. 2 weeks went by like that. Church on Sunday, sitting through a Tagalog Hiligaynon mixed mass I didn't understand a word of, but somehow didn't mind. Evenings on plastic chairs with San Miguel, going warm in my hand faster than I could drink it. And by the time I was on the tricycle back to the airport, I already had the return flight half planned in my head. Didn't tell her that part yet. But one knew. Whatever this was, I wasn't finished with it. Home again, and everything felt wrong-sized for about 2 weeks. My flat in Stuttgart, which had always seemed small, plain, sufficient, now felt like a box I'd been mistakenly posted back into. I kept thinking about the sound of roosters at dawn. If you can believe that, actually missing something that had annoyed me the first few mornings. We talked most days still, same as before, except now there was a photograph in my head to attach to every word she said. That's different. I found myself explaining to my sister, over coffee, that I was seeing someone. Ute, actually, God bless her, she just asked one question. Does she seem to genuinely like you, Wolfgang, or does she seem to like your bank account? Fair question. I told her, honestly, I don't know yet, but I don't think it's the second one. Ute wasn't fully convinced. I understood why. I went back twice more over the following 6 months. Second visit was shorter, 10 days, and that's when Ronnie brought up the resort idea. We were sitting in the yard, evening, San Miguel going warm again in my hand, and he started talking about a stretch of land his cousin's family had near the coast, not far from Guimaras Crossing, decent little beach frontage, nothing fancy, but the sort of spot where you could put in maybe 6 or 8 simple cottages and catch the domestic tourism trade. Local families, mostly, some backpackers. I'll admit something to you. I hadn't built anything with my hands in 2 years by that point. 2 years of being a man with savings and no project. And here was Ronnie, sketching something out on a piece of cardboard torn off a San Miguel case, talking about foundations and cottage layouts. And I felt something wake up in me that I hadn't felt since the workshop days. I actually took the cardboard from him at one point and started correcting his drainage layout. "Man," I said, "you'll flood the whole lower row in typhoon season if you don't route it this way." He just laughed. Said, "You see, this is why we need you." Now, the land question. I'd done my homework on this one, I want you to know that, because I can already hear some of you shouting at the screen. Foreigners cannot own land in the Philippines. I knew that going in, I'd read enough forums to have that hammered into my skull. So when the topic came up of whose name the title would go under, I wasn't shocked, wasn't naive about it, in the way I think some men are. I understood the property would go into Mariti's name. I looked into the corporate structures, too. The 40-60 ownership arrangements some foreigners use, spoke to a Filipino lawyer over a video call even, paid him for an hour of his time, felt very thorough about the whole thing. In the end, we kept it simple. Land in her name. I told myself this was normal. This was just how it worked here. And there are proper legal instruments, usufruct agreements, and long-term leases that a foreigner can put in place to protect his interest, even without owning the title outright. I looked into those, too, a bit. Didn't finish the paperwork before sending money, though. That's the part one think about now. I did the research. I just didn't finish it before I opened my wallet. 600,000 pesos, that first transfer. About 10,000 euros. Land purchase and the initial site clearing, Ronnie said, plus some materials, hollow blocks, sand, gravel, that sort of thing. I sent it through a remittance service, Wise, straight into Mariti's account, since the seller apparently only dealt in cash, and she'd handle it locally. 10,000 euros isn't nothing to me. It's a chunk of my 95. But I did the sums, told myself. This is an investment with a return, unlike a pension account sitting there earning nothing. Third visit, few months later, I actually got to see it. Cleared land, a bit of foundation work started, some of Ronnie's crew mixing concrete by hand in the heat, no mixer, just men with shovels and a rhythm to it that honestly impressed me. We went to Sunday Mass together, Marites and her mother and me, at that same big white church near her place. And afterward, there was a family lunch. More relatives than I could keep track of, cousins and an uncle who kept refilling my glass with Tanduay, even though I kept saying, "Salamat, no more, please." I felt like I belonged somewhere for the first time in years. That's the honest truth of it. Not just to Marites, to all of them. The kids called me Kuya Wolf by then, which her mother told me meant older brother, sort of, a term of affection, and something about that landed harder than I expected. Money for the build kept going out in bits after that. Not huge sums. 40,000 here for more blocks. 20,000 there when the delivery truck broke down and needed hiring twice. No receipts, mind you. I noticed that. Asked once, casually, and Ronnie just waved his hand, said, "Don't worry, Wolfgang, everything is accounted for. This is how we do things in the province, not like your German paperwork." I laughed along with it, told myself, different systems, not dishonesty. Everyone here operates on trust and handshakes. That's just the culture. By the time I flew home after that third visit, the foundation was in, and the first cottage frame was going up. I remember standing at the site the last morning, watching the sun come up orange over that flat gray water, thinking, whatever else happens with Marites and me, I built something again. That part, at least, felt true. Turned out to be the easy part, as it happens. The second cottage was where things started to slow down. First one had gone up clean enough, roof on before the rains really hit, and I remember feeling proud of it in a way I hadn't expected, standing under that tin roof, listening to rain hammer down and thinking, that's mine, or partly mine, or something like mine, even if the paperwork said otherwise. Then the barangay permits stalled. This happens, apparently, all the time. Some issue with the zoning classification for the second structure. Something about the setback distance from the waterline that hadn't been flagged for the first cottage. Ronnie explained it to me over a video call, sitting in what I recognized as the unfinished second building, concrete blocks stacked around him, rebar sticking up like some kind of steel garden. He said it would need, and I remember the number exactly because I wrote it down in a notebook the way I used to write down material costs for a job back home, 1.2 million pesos. Roughly 20,000 euros. For permit fees, expedited processing, and finishing the second building properly this time, done right. No more stop-start. 20,000 euros. I sat there after that call for a long while, I'll admit. Add it up with me if you like numbers, same as I do. 2,500 for the shop restock. 10,000 for the land and first building. Now 20 more. 32,500 euros, roughly, out of 95. More than a third of everything I had left in the world, into a piece of land I didn't legally own. Built by a crew I'd never fully audited. Based on a phone call from a man I liked, but had known, in total, maybe 6 weeks of my actual life. I want to be honest about something here, because this is the part where one think a lot of men either lie to themselves or lie to you watching. I wasn't a fool about this. I asked questions. For the first time, really. I pushed. I said to Ronnie, over that same call, send me an itemized breakdown, please. Materials, labor, permit fees, broken down separately. I do this for a living, remember? Or did. I know what a proper quote looks like. I've written hundreds of them. What I got back, 2 days later, was a photo of a handwritten list on a page torn from a school notebook. Cement bags, some number. Labor, some larger number. No daily rate specified. No hours. Permit. One lump figure with no receipt attached. No government stamp. Nothing. I looked at that photo a long time, sitting at my kitchen table in Stuttgart with my coffee going cold. And something in me, the tradesman part, the part that spent 30 years knowing exactly what a job should cost, that part went very quiet and very uneasy. I called Marites that evening instead of Ronnie. Asked her, gently, I thought, whether she'd seen actual receipts for any of this. She got quiet for a second, and then she said, Wolfgang, my family is not lying to you. Ronnie is doing his best. This is how construction works here. You cannot always get an official receipt for everything. Some suppliers are small, cash only, no printer even. And I believed that. Mostly. I want you to understand, none of what she said there was false. Not exactly. Small provincial suppliers really don't always give proper receipts. That part's true. But here's the thing I didn't say to her that night, and I think about it more than almost anything else in this whole story. I knew, sitting there, that if one of my own men back in Stuttgart had handed me a bill like that, on a notebook page, no rates, no hours, I would have sent him straight back to redo it before a single euro moved. I knew what I knew. And I sent the money anyway. Wired it through Wise again, same as before, straight to Marites' account, since apparently that was simpler than routing it through Ronnie directly. Family arrangement, she said. 1.2 million pesos. 20,000 euros, near enough, at the rate that week. I told myself once more, one more injection and it's done. The second building finished. The whole resort operational, income starting to flow back. This is what an investment looks like in its rough middle stage. Nobody said it would be tidy. That uneasy feeling didn't go away after I sent it, though. That's the difference this time. Every other stage I'd felt some warmth afterward, some sense of having done something good, contributed to the family, built something. This time, I just felt a small, cold weight sitting somewhere behind my ribs that I couldn't talk myself out of, no matter how many times I told myself, different systems, not dishonesty, that's just how it works here. I didn't say anything more to Marie-Thèse about it for a few weeks. Told myself I was being paranoid, an old German worrying too much about paperwork in a country that doesn't run on paperwork. But I started keeping a private file on my laptop after that. Every transfer, every date, every peso amount, every promise attached to it. Nobody asked me to do that. I just found myself doing it anyway, the way you check a pressure gauge, even when you're fairly sure the reading will be fine. I flew back out 4 months after that, no warning, told Marie-Thèse I was coming, but not the exact date, said something vague about wanting to surprise her, which was half true. The other half was that I wanted to see the site the way it actually was, not the way it looked framed in a phone camera at whatever angle Ronnie chose to film it. Iloilo felt the same coming off the plane, same wall of heat, same diesel smell. But I didn't feel the same landing there this time. There was a weight in my chest the whole ride out, past the same rice fields, same basketball courts, and I kept thinking, stop it, Wolfgang. You're imagining problems. This is what a suspicious old man does. I told myself that the whole tricycle ride. Didn't believe it, not fully. The site looked wrong the second I saw it. First cottage stood there finished, same as I remembered, but the second one, the one I'd sent 20,000 euros toward finishing properly, sat exactly where it had been in that video call 4 months earlier. Same rebar sticking up, same half-poured foundation, cement bags stacked under a tarp, gone hard and useless from the rain getting in, cracked open like gray loaves of bread nobody wanted anymore. No workers on site. Not a single one. Middle of a weekday. I stood there a good while, just looking at it. There's a particular kind of quiet that comes over a man when a number he's been carrying around in his head, a hopeful number, meets a piece of ground that tells him a completely different story. I've felt that quiet exactly twice in my life. Once when the bank called about the housing development falling through, and then standing on that half-built cottage floor with my shoes getting dusty from cracked cement. Marie-Thèse came to find me there. Must have heard from a neighbor that a foreigner was walking around the resort. She looked, and I want to say this carefully because I've turned it over so many times since. She looked genuinely surprised. Not caught out surprised. Confused surprised. She asked Ronnie where the crew was, right there in front of me, on the phone, in Hiligaynon, and I couldn't follow the words, but I could follow the tone, and her tone was not soft. We went back to the house, and I asked, straight out this time, no gentleness left in it, where is the 20,000 euros? She didn't deny anything happened to it. That's the part that stayed with me. She didn't say, what money? What are you talking about? She got very still instead, and then she got angry. But not at me exactly. More like the anger was looking for somewhere to land and I happened to be standing there. She said, you think we are stealing from you, after everything my family has given you? After the food, after the church, after you became Kuya Wolf to my nephews. And I stood there, and some part of me actually felt guilty, if you can believe that. Guilty for asking where my own 20,000 euros had gone. It came out slowly over that evening and the next day, pieced together between Marie-Thèse, her mother, and eventually Ronnie himself on a call he clearly didn't want to be on. Ronnie had used a good portion of the second building money to cover a debt of his own, some obligation to a cousin, a loan gone bad on a jeepney he'd co-signed for, something like that. I never got the full shape of it. He hadn't run off with it in the way you'd picture a thief running. He'd just, in his own words, borrowed it forward, fully intending, he said, to put it back once the jeepney situation resolved itself. Maritis hadn't known. I believe that part, actually, still do. She'd trusted her sister's husband with money the same way she'd trust any family member. No oversight, no second signature, because that isn't how it works there. Checking up on family is itself the insult. She cried that second night, properly cried, not performance crying, the kind where a person's whole face changes shape. She kept saying, "Sorry, Wolfgang, sorry," over and over, and I didn't know if she was sorry for Ronnie, or sorry for me, or sorry that the whole framework she'd grown up trusting had failed in front of a foreigner she genuinely cared about. I sat outside that night on the same plastic chair I'd sat in during my first visit, San Miguel gone warm in my hand, same as always, and I looked at that half-finished cottage in the dark and thought, there it is. There's my 32,500 euros, standing there half-built, legally belonging to a woman who didn't steal it, spent by a man who didn't quite steal it either, not the way you'd picture theft, just gone, sideways, the way water finds a crack you didn't know was there. I flew home 3 days after that, didn't extend the ticket, didn't try to salvage anything on site, just went. Maritis drove with me to the airport in the tricycle, quiet the whole way, and at the departure gate she cried properly again, said, "Sorry, Wolfgang, sorry," and offered to pay me back monthly from the store, whatever she could manage, 30,000 pesos at a time, if that's what it took. I told her no, not out of anger. I want to be clear about that. I just knew I couldn't keep a hand in that account, watching small payments trickle back over what would probably be years, checking my phone every month for a transfer that might or might not come. Some debts you have to let go of on purpose, or they never actually leave you. I did the final accounting on the flight home, same way I always do things. Notebook out, actual numbers. 2,500 euros for the shop, 10,000 for the land and first cottage, 20,000 for the second building that never got built. 32,500 euros total, near enough 18,000 of it gone for good with nothing to show, the rest sitting in a finished cottage on land I'll never legally own, generating no income, because who's going to run a resort with half of it still rebar and cracked cement? People ask me now, back home, whether I hate her. I don't. That surprises some of them. She didn't take a peso for herself, as far as I can tell. Still can't quite prove it either way. That's the honest truth. But nothing in how she's lived since suggests a woman sitting on stolen money. She trusted her sister's husband the way her whole family trusts each other. No oversight, no signatures, because checking up on family is itself the insult there. That trust just happened to run straight through a man with a debt of his own. I don't think that makes her a villain. I think it makes her Filipino, in a way I never fully understood until it cost me something. What I understand now, sitting here in Stuttgart, with maybe 60,000 euros left of what was 95, is that I spent 30 years learning how to test a system before I trusted it. Pressure gauges, load calculations. You don't sign off on a job until the numbers hold up on paper and in the pipe both. And I went to a country where the whole culture runs on a different kind of proof, on family, on faces you don't check up on. And I tried to build something there the same way I'd built things back home. Half German precision, half blind hope. Turns out you can't mix those two the way you mix concrete. One of them always gives. I still talk to Marites now and then. Not often. Christmas, mostly. A message back and forth. She sent a photo a few months back. The first cottage, still standing. Apparently she's been renting it out herself. Small amounts. Tourists passing through Gomara's crossing. Said she's saving toward finishing the second one properly. On her own, no promises attached this time. I don't know if that's true. I choose to believe it anyway. Costs me nothing to believe it now. The money's already gone either way. If there's a lesson in this, and I've had a long time on plane rides and quiet evenings to work one out, it's not don't trust Filipinos, and it's not don't fall for a woman online. It's simpler than that, and harder too. Test the thing you can test. The land title, the receipts, the itemized quote. Do that before you send the money, not after, when it's already sunk into ground you don't own. And the thing you can't test, the family, the love, the whole tangled utang na loob of it, you have to decide in advance how much of that you're willing to lose, because you will never fully know until it's already spent. I didn't decide that in advance. I found out the hard way, the way I find out most things, apparently, standing on cracked concrete looking at what didn't hold. That's Wolfgang's story. And we want to be honest with you, this one doesn't wrap up in a neat bow, because life in the Philippines rarely does. There's no villain to point at here, no clean scam to warn you away from. Just a good man, a genuine family, and a cultural gap wide enough to swallow 32,000 euros without anyone ever quite meaning it to happen. If you're watching this considering your own journey into the Philippines, whether it's love, retirement, or business, take Wolfgang's advice to heart. Test what can be tested. Get the paperwork finished before the money moves, not after. And go in understanding that trust means something different there than it might back home. And that difference alone can cost you everything if you're not careful. Thanks for watching Inside the Philippines. If Wolfgang's story moved you, let us know in the comments, and we'll see you in the next one.